people from the most important thing of their life is to practice their faith and transmit it to their children.
He's speaking about government needs to leave us alone.
Right, because if this is the most important issue before you, whether you're an Orthodox Jew or a conservative Catholic, an evangelical Christian, a Mormon, a Muslim, whatever it is, you want to be left alone to practice your faith. You understand perfectly well that the guy across the street is going to Hades because he completely misunderstands Scripture, but he's allowed to do that, so I can be free to go the other direction. Our coalition works and was recognized by Ronald Reagan as such, as a coalition of people who wish to be left alone. Works because nobody in this room or in the coalition wants anything at the expense of anybody else in the room. Now, the guy who wants to count his money all day may look across the table at the guy who wants to go to church all day and say, that's not how I spend my time. And they both may look over at the guy who wants to fondle his guns all day and say, well, you know, that's not how we spend our free time. It's not necessary that we all agree how we spend our free time or organize our life. We simply have to agree that the government should be small enough to leave the rest of us alone, keep the Canadians on their side of the border, and
how about the Mexicans?
Move forward from there and stop messing with us.
I'm not worried about Canadians.
Now, I was called by a New York reporter when Hillary Clinton, this is back when Hillary was running for the Senate in New York. She was doing her listening tour. And she said, you know, what progressives need, because they'd run liberal into the dirt, right? So they changed it to progressive, but some of us may be old enough to remember they gave up on progressive when it became, coterminous with Stalinism, so they moved to liberal.
Communism.
Anyway, they're working on going after progressive. But that's what us progressives
Thanks for joining, Ben.
Is one of those meetings like Grover Norquist runs in D.C. where we all get together. And the reporter said, what do you think? And I explained, well, our coalition works because everybody can work together because they want to vote for the same candidate who will leave us all alone. What would Hillary's table look like? One subsequently stolen by Barack Obama. Around Hillary's table, trial lawyers, the labor unions, and we're the Leave Us Alone coalition. They're the Takings coalition. They view the proper role of government as taking things from some people and giving them to other people, usually them and usually money. So around the table, the trial lawyers, the labor unions, the big city political machines, the two wings of the dependency movement, people who are locked into welfare dependency, and the people who make $90,000 a year, managing their dependency, making sure none of them are actually getting jobs and become Republicans.
Yep.
Add to that group, you have all the coercive utopians. These are the people who are better, nicer, smarter, more moral than we are, and are determined to use the government to tell us how to lead our lives so we can be as nice as them someday. These are the people who mandate the toilets that are too small to flush completely, who invent and mandate the light bulbs that convince you have cataracts, the ones who organize that on the Sabbath you have to separate the green glass from the brown glass from the white glass for all the recycling priests. They have a list of things you have to do and a list of things you're not allowed to do that is slightly longer and more tedious than Leviticus.
Sounds like Pharisees.
And they want
this
to
is Grover Norquist, everybody.
By the government. Here's our job. Our job is to make more of us and fewer of them. Around the left's coalition, around their table, right, they can get along if we're stupid enough to keep throwing money into the middle of the table. Because then they get along like that scene in the movie after the bank robbery. One for you, everybody's happy because everybody's getting money. That was the whole point of the stimulus package that Obama dropped $800 billion in the center of the table. Everybody on the left very happy. Then over time, that $800 billion dwindled down. And if we do our job right, if we say no new taxes and keep to it, and don't give them additional money to spend, then all our friends on the left around their table begin to look at each other a little bit more like the second to the last scene in those lifeboat movies. Now they're wondering who to eat or who to throw overboard. Because the left is not made up of friends and allies. The left is made up of competing parasites.
That's right, and that's actually happening right now.
Our job is to say no new taxes, and to mean it, and to hold to it, so that 2 years from now, 4 years from now, the other team, because look, if the money's dwindling down, and you don't feed them taxpayers, they will chew on the guy sitting next to them, okay? Because every dollar that goes to that other special interest doesn't go to me, and that's not my friend, that's my enemy. Our job is to not give them more money so that 2 and 4 years from now, when we meet them again, they're shorter and there are fewer of them. These are the two competing coalitions in American politics.
Locusts, great
when
word.
Reagan asked me to run Americans for Tax Reform, I created the Taxpayer Protection Pledge. We have about 95% of Republicans in the House and Senate who've made that commitment. Quite a number of state legislators, not as many in this state as we need.
And real ones.
It's been very, very helpful in drawing the line and getting people to vote against taxes. We had some people break the pledge in 1990, if you remember, when George Herbert Walker Bush decided to break his pledge and support a tax increase. No one's life is a complete waste. Some people serve as bad examples. But every single Republican who cast a vote for tax increases is no longer in Congress. So everybody there has kept the pledge and
Come to Sacramento.
they've taken the pledge and kept it. What the pledge has done is brand the Republican Party as the party that will not raise your taxes. The year we got to 99% of everybody in Congress taking the pledge was in 1994. It helped. That was the year we swept the House and the Senate. This, comrade, was not a coincidence. It flowed from it. And Coca-Cola recognizes the importance of its brand. They have quality control. They make the brand very famous, so you can go in to the store and pick up a bottle of Coke and take it right out. You don't ask to taste it. You don't read the ingredients. You don't ask your friends what they think about it. You know what's in there. So you can safely take it home and drink. Now, but if you get home and you're 2/3 through your bottle of Coke and you look down and there is a rat head in what's left of your Coke bottle, you do not say to yourself, you know, I'm thinking I may not finish all the rest of this Coke. Not tonight. In fact, you go on social media and take a selfie and show all your friends the rat in the Coke bottle, and Coca-Cola has a big problem. Not one person, but everybody. It damages the brand for everybody when you allow something like that to happen. Republicans who vote for tax increases are rat heads.
Yeah! Absolutely.
They damage the brand for all Republicans. They confuse small children. Mom, you said, and right there, I see one. We need to hold on never raising taxes. The Democrats are consistent and aggressive.
Yep.
They are on tax increases.
Ben's listing the names.
Like a teenage boy on a prom date. They keep asking the same question over and over again. Different ways, but it seems to get to the same tax increase. And it is important that we remember to say no, 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 because no, no, yes screws up the whole point of the procedure. No, no, no. Now, we get a lot of nonsense from people in Washington, D.C. who tell us, you know what we ought to have is those good old days of bipartisan compromise.
Oh, brother.
People who talk like this are really telling you how very old they are. Because it is true that years ago, you know, there were Southerners who agreed with Ronald Reagan on absolutely everything, and they voted for George McGovern because Sherman had been unkind to Atlanta recently, and they were still voting that way. So we did actually have conservative Democrats and liberal and moderate Republicans because the parties just told you somebody's a Republican, okay, he was born north of the Mason-Dixon line. You didn't know anything else about him, but where he was born. During the lifetime of Ronald Reagan, we sorted the two parties out based on principle. And actually, the one issue that divides the two parties more than any other is the tax question. There's some Democrats who can be good on a few issues over there, but none of them won't raise your taxes. Not one. Not one. Not one. It is the issue that separates the two parties. So this bipartisan thing, everything back in the 1950s was bipartisan because the liberal Democrats and the liberal Republicans would fight the conservative Republicans and the conservative Democrats because shirts and skins didn't mean anything. Everything was bipartisan, but their definition of compromise, bipartisan compromise, was Richard Nixon was willing to let the government get bigger, and Ted Kennedy wanted the government to get much bigger. So every year we'd have a big fight between bigger and somewhat bigger and much bigger, and it'd be somewhat bigger. And then the next year we'd go between bigger and much bigger, and we get somewhat more bigger. And we keep doing this every year until we're up against the wall. Their idea of compromise was to continue to grow the government. Now, I am for compromise properly understood. Compromise means going in the direction of liberty as quickly as humanly possible.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't have enough guys in the legislature to do more, so we do as much as we can. I get it. You don't get to win everything in a day. What would we do the rest of the time? So compromise, meaning we're going towards liberty, towards liberty, towards liberty. Every step towards liberty is progress. You go as fast as you can, as far as you can. You recognize sometimes the answer is you can't go any further. You stop there.
I am at the California Republican Party convention
So if you're
in
trying to
Anaheim,
get
California.
to LA from Washington, D.C., and you find yourself in Missouri, which is right next door to Missouri, that is not treason, okay? Missouri is on the way to California from D.C. But if you say, I'm going to D.C., and after a while your feet are all wet and everybody around you is speaking French, you've been moving in the wrong direction. That's not called compromising, it's called losing. And sometimes the liberals tell us to compromise when they mean lose, okay? So compromise is not a dirty word as long as we understand that compromise means moving towards liberty as far as we can, never moving away from liberty. Tax increases are never part of compromising.
Never.
Why don't we have a tax increase and a promised budget cut?
No.
Which you'll never see, right?
That's
And
California.
they said, wouldn't you like that? And I said, no. Any more than I'd like a pizza with pepperoni and shards of glass, okay? Remove the shards of glass and we can talk. No, but there's pepperoni and with the shards of glass. Why don't you eat the whole thing? On taxes. We're going to get a good tax cut. And Steve walked through it, cut both the rates for businesses, for individuals, for self-employed people, going to full and immediate business expensing for 5 years. Wink, wink, it's going to be permanent, but to make it fit inside the little budget window thing they do, we say it's 5 years. It'll be permanently there. Huge driver in dropping the cost of investment in the United States in plant and equipment. We need to move towards taxing income at one rate, not the many rates, but one rate. But let me be clear why. This is not because one rate is fair. Taxation is all about taking money from people who earned it and giving it to people who perhaps didn't. Fair is not part of this, okay? It can be less destructive, it can be less stupid, it can be less damaging to economic growth. Fair is not the question. So, why do we want one rate? Because a single rate is harder to increase. Those states, unlike California, before I emigrated to the United States, I grew up in Massachusetts. And I decided to stay, it's a nice country. In Massachusetts, they have by constitution a single rate tax. It's 5 1/4, okay? They're not any saner in Massachusetts than California. But in California, if the politicians want to raise the income tax, they have to look at the whole state at once and say, got a really good idea, and you're all paying for it. In which case, we're all ears, and it better be a good idea. They're at 5 1/4. You guys are at 13 something. Because you do the graduated, okay? The graduated tax increase, this is the Richard Speck theory of tax increases. If you explain to the younger person next to you who Richard Speck was. If you can't take on everyone in the room at once, you take them out of the room one at a time. And that's what Obama did. Oh, just the 1%, not you. And he came back, and 16 days after getting elected, he taxed people average income $40,000, and there was 8 different taxes in Obamacare on lower income people. But you get people divided up into different groups, you mug them one at a time. If everybody has to face the tax collector at the same rate, it keeps rates down for everybody. And we want tax income one time. Right now they tax it when you earn it, when you save it, when you invest it, if you get a dividend, if the corporation invests in, earn something, if you have a capital gain, and if you're stupid enough to die, they can take half. Boom, 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 boom. They just keep following you around and carving out a piece of your hide, and they, oh, this is different than the other taxes. It's got a new name, death tax, that's it. This bill gets rid of the death tax. This bill begins to pull back the number of taxes that we face. How do we win faster? Well, Democrats have been saying for years, and wrote books about it. Demographics prove that we're going to win because they think all demographics is racial or ethnic, which is nonsense, but that's their worldview and that's the way they treat people. I want to argue that we need to make more of us and fewer of them. And we should listen to the communist playwright Bertolt Brecht, who, when the East Germans in 1953, the workers were having a workers' revolt, which is a little embarrassing to a good socialist, because you're not supposed to have a workers' revolt and a workers' paradise, which East Germany was, thanks to the Soviet Union occupation. And somebody stuck a microphone in front of this character and said, okay, what's happening in East Germany? And he said, well, it's clear we need to elect a new people. It couldn't be the communist government's fault, it must be a new people. Well, I suggest we can, in the United States, elect a new people. And let me give you some examples. 30 years ago, homeschooling was illegal in 48 states. Go to jail, illegal in 48 states.
Wow.
Truancy, right? It's now legal in all 57 states. And they win all the spelling bees. Okay? 2 million kids homeschool. The Democrats are run by the teachers union, which would kill homeschooling if they could, and every time they can take a bite at it, they do. 2 million people, families, cannot vote for the Ds, have to be on our team. We make more of us. Second Amendment. Who votes on the Second Amendment issue? Well, there are 5 million members of the NRA, that's a good start. But 30 years ago, there were about 7 states that had shall issue concealed carry laws. There were fewer than 1 or 2 million Americans who had a concealed carry weapons permit. I guess I have to draw a picture for you guys in California what those look like. But in other states,
Yeah, I know.
they give them away like candy. In other states, if you're 21, you're not a criminal, you're not a bad guy, here is your permit. Boom, you're all set. It's your right to have it. The permit lets you cross to other states with it.
Constitutional carry.
There are today 16.3 million Americans with concealed carry permits. 16.3 million.
Wow.
10 years ago, it was about 4 million. So that number is actually a real hockey stick number. It's growing and growing dramatically. I mean, these are people who've decided that I really appreciate the government's offer to, provide services like if I get killed, they come and draw this really attractive chalk mark all around my body. And, if you didn't have government, who would do that? I think I'll pass on that and be responsible for my family's safety. 16.3 million people who cannot vote for the other team. Uber, Lyft, okay, independent contractors. I love Uber and Lyft. This is a new thing that they've got, which is corporate civil disobedience. Every city, Uber, Lyft, I just do Uber because it's shorter, but Lyft and all the others that are similar. Every city Uber went into, it was a crime. It was illegal. The law was designed not to allow this kind of competition. It was designed to punish people, and they just showed up and they got enough riders and enough drivers, and they said, you can't arrest us all. We're here at this lunch table and we're driving around and you have to back down. And they have, city after city, state after state.
That's a great
thing. That's about 850,000 people with a job. Remember, Hillary Clinton ran saying she was committed to cracking down on independent contractor law. Without the independent contractor law, you cannot have Uber. It cannot exist. It would be illegal at the federal level, never mind city by city.
Wow.
It doesn't work if everybody was an employee and punched a clock. It's the flexibility that cannot live within a Wagner Act set of labor laws as envisioned by Hillary Clinton
Talk about
and
right
the
to
labor
work.
union bosses.
Okay, let's hope he talks about
We
right
can
to
make
work
more of
next.
us.
Right
We
to
can
work.
also make fewer of them.
That's very important.
In Utah, how about Wisconsin? Close. In Wisconsin, they passed Act 10.
Yes.
Act 10 was a good start.
Yes.
And it said, you know what? You can have a union, public sector union, but you can't make anyone join.
Okay, Scott
You can't
Walker's
have
Act 10
mandatory
was
dues. You
brilliant.
can't have mandatory
Right to work.
fees. The government will not
Step in.
collect the fees or the dues that you do get for you. You have to come and say, give me the $1,000. Teacher making $50,000 base pay pays $1,000, 2%.
That's
Okay?
wrong.
We won't withhold it so that they don't see it on their paycheck. They got to come and say, give me the $1,000, please. And people can say no. Also, you cannot negotiate under this new law work rules, pay increases beyond the rate of inflation. You can have them, but you just can't negotiate them. Pensions cannot be negotiated, and benefits cannot be
Thank
negotiated.
God
They
for
have
Scott
pensions, they
Walker.
have benefits, but they're paid by the city what they can afford, not negotiated so that 30 years from now you become Detroit. And when I'm dead, no longer the mayor, and I'm dead, somebody else collapses and has to explain to taxpayers or workers that somebody's really screwed at the end of this game. With that, about a third of the government workers decided to stop paying dues.
Yes.
137,000 people who had been paying $1,000 in dues. I went to public school, but I wrote this down so I'd remember. That's $137 million missing every year from the left's coffers
Yes.
in one state.
Yes. That's what's killing us in California. The damn public sector unions own
And-
everything in this state. folks.
Look, the other
That's
team
California.
isn't stupid, they're evil.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't plan on stupid, but every once in a while, I can't understand how Hillary's people didn't notice that when they called
Hey,
into
Barbara, don't worry,
Wisconsin,
Connecticut's
nobody
going red
answered
next
the
year.
phone, because they didn't have the cash. In a 4 to 5 year period, they were down $500 million from cash that they didn't have that would normally be dragging people to the polls and doing get out the vote and all this other stuff.
Right.
And they didn't realize they had to make that up, and they lost the state.
Yes.
We can make fewer of them.
Yep. We're working on it.
If you have $5,000 worth of stock, you are 20% more likely to be a Republican and less likely to be a Democrat, regardless of age, income, race, anything else. Whatever demographic, you are more Republican if 20% more, on average, 20% if you own shares of stock. That's why we're for health savings accounts, personal savings accounts, retirement savings accounts,
Yeah.
educational savings accounts, making it easier for people to save money for their retirement, moving to IRAs and 401ks,
Tiny.
because it makes more of
Mr.
us.
Tusitala.
It's good for the country, and it's good for the taxpayers, and it's good for people's ability to control their own lives, and it makes more of us.
Yes.
If you have a government job for more than 20 years, you're 30% more likely to be a Democrat. This is why the Democrat solution to every problem in the world is 100,000 more fill-in-the-blank government worker type that they have. They want more government workers. It means more Ds. If we can get things done by the private sector rather than the government, it makes more Rs. Okay? This is not complicated. This is easy, and our team needs to remember to work on just this. And let me close here by pointing out that in California you have a real opportunity in fighting the gas tax.
Yes.
In my home country of Massachusetts, they put a gas tax up through the legislature. They beat it 60-40 when they put it on the ballot.
Yep.
It didn't have as much money, the good guys, we didn't have as much money as we needed. We did have radio talk shows and other people who helped promoted it. But I think that unifying Californians and focusing
And
on the left's
Massachusetts has a
desire to
Republican
raise
governor. He's
gas
kind of low, I know,
taxes,
but
what 30% of which will be
better than a
funneled
dab.
off into something, and the other 70% will be waved in front of roads, but probably not get to the roads. In ancient Egypt, people would bring food and offerings and put them in front of the stone god of Isis, not the recent one, the nicer one. But anyway, it's a big stone thing, right? Osiris and Isis. Okay. And they put the food there, and Isis would absorb the essence of the food, the stone god, right? And then you would leave, and all the priests would come out and take all the food needed. Right? when we make sacrifices to education, you know, education smells it, and then the teachers union come out and take it on. So we got to quit doing these financial sacrifices in a road's a sacrifice. Does it get to the roads? No, but the roads will smell it. We'll mention roads as we spend all the money someplace else.
Yep, that's right.
We're going to have a significant tax cut. It should pass before Christmas. It could pass even sooner because every one of the 52 Republicans in the Senate has now stated that they are for passing the tax cut. Rand Paul, who voted against the budget because he was trying to make a point about budgets, fine, just on your own time, like those guys with the knees, not now.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
We didn't need the vote. It was okay, but it was still a little, you know, because you didn't know where the other people were going to be. But he immediately tweeted out the next day, hey, I'm all in on tax reform. He was trying to make a point on budgets. Point taken, whatever it was. But the senator from Alaska in the budget is something that opens up ANWR drilling. Okay, very important.
That's right.
If we do not let the Alaskans drill in ANWR, they will be down here drilling in the federal budget. So let's get them drilling in ANWR and producing oil and all sorts of cool stuff like that. And then they can be Qatar and just go have fun. And the main vote, she's very good on tax reform. She just wants to get to it. And she voted for the tax bill. And not only voted for the budget bill, but she said, I'm voting for the budget bill because I want to vote for the tax bill. So everybody's on board. We're going to make this happen. When people say, how are you going to write it in a few weeks? Guys, we've been writing it for months. It's largely written. And the good news, it's really moving forward. We're going to get a solid one. And let me tell you, from the lips of the Vice President and the Speaker of the House and the head of the Ways and Means Committee, every one of them said to me, we're going to have a tax cut every year.
Huh.
There's a Republican Congress and a Republican president.
All right.
We're going to have discussions about what fits in, and it's not going to be as big a tax cut as you or I would like because they've got stupid Senate rules and the Joint Tax Committee is annoying and lots of things. But we're getting the best tax cut we can fit into their box. We come back with another box next year, and we keep coming back. But if there's only one plane out of Casablanca every 30 years, okay, they're very sharp elbows about getting on that plane. I gotta have my thing in the bill. But if we're gonna have a bus come by every 20 minutes, the little old lady in the wheelchair who you're about to push over, you can actually help into the plane and you can take the next one, okay? So when we make the case and point out to people that we are in fact going to have a tax cut every year, if you have a brilliant idea, and I think I have several, but anyway, if you have something you think is really important that didn't get into this year's budget, the tax cut, introduce it for next year. And the conversation I've had with the Vice President and Ryan is, my thought is everybody who says, I have an idea, and you say, I'm sorry, we're full up, and you say, I'd like to be considered for next year, if you're helpful this year, you're at the front of the line for next year's tax cut. If, like the realtors, you're out kicking people in the shins, then you're at the back of the line in about 5 years. So everybody, we need to be cheerful, get this thing passed.
This is Grover Norquist, everybody. Grover Norquist.
And then come back and keep coming back every year, bringing taxes down, giving people more of their lives, their time, their energy, more time with their families, more time to do what they want to do, because all taxes are taking away the time from people when you take away their income and their earnings and their wealth. Thank you very much, California.
All right. Okay, everybody, thanks again. Remember, please donate to help me out.
That this generation
Thank you so much.
can be and will be won over by our set of ideas. We're kind of at a turning point in this country. I started an organization, Turning Point USA, 2.5 years ago, around two key values: free markets and limited government. What we're looking at is the most independent generation in American history. And young people all across the country are looking for an alternative point of view. They're sick and tired of big government telling them how to live their life. They're struggling under the burden of student loans. They can't find jobs. They're sick of the government reading their text messages. There is a almost countercultural, counter-institutional grassroots movement of students rising up. I saw the potential, people in the trenches fighting this fight on a daily basis.
Charlie Kirk is saying enough is enough.
For over 1,000 campuses nationwide, college and high school, we hosted the largest Young Women's Leadership Summit in the country with over 125 of our top young women leaders. We hosted the largest Young Latino Leadership Summit event in the country. We will be there out in the public square, recruiting, evangelizing, persuading, engaging, collecting information, registering voters, persistent, aggressive, and effective grassroots activism.
Okay, I'll be right back, folks. Give me a minute.